They stood like giants on the silver screen, commanding every frame and dwarfing co-stars with their larger-than-life personas. But Hollywood's biggest secret? These towering legends were anything but towering in real life. From 5'2" powerhouses to leading men who needed trenches dug on set just so their taller co-stars wouldn't completely overshadow them. The studios would do anything to hide their diminutive dimensions from fans. Get ready to see classic Hollywood in a whole new light as we reveal the shocking truth about 15 Golden Age stars who weren't just short, they were shockingly short. Alan Ladd. Alan Ladd's piercing blue eyes and tight-lipped intensity made him one of Hollywood's most compelling tough guys. But at just 5'6", and some insiders swore he was even shorter, Paramount had to invent an entire arsenal of tricks just to make him look average height. His partnership with 411. Veronica Lake wasn't just about sizzling chemistry. It was a strategic casting move to make Ladd look taller without any camera magic. The most outrageous height deception? During filming of Shane, director George Stevens had actual trenches dug for co-stars like Jack Palance and Van Heflin to stand in when sharing scenes with Ladd. These Ladd trenches became so common that crew members on other films would ask, "Are we digging Ladd holes today?" when working with shorter actors. Cinematographers developed specialized low angles just for him, while costume designers created suits with vertical pinstripes and high-waisted pants to create visual lengthening. Even his acting style was shaped by his height. His minimalist, tight-lipped performance approach evolved partly because larger gestures would have disrupted the carefully arranged height illusions. Director Gene Nicolesco once observed, "What Alan lacked in inches, he made up for in intensity. The camera didn't see his height, it saw his eyes." James Kagny. James Cagney's explosive screen presence and tough guy image dominated Hollywood for decades in classics from The Public Enemy to White Heat. You'd swear he was 6 feet tall from the way he commanded every scene, but the man who made gangsters iconic stood just 5'5" in his stocking feet. Unlike stars who were sensitive about their stature, Kagny approached his height pragmatically. "I don't care how tall I am," he once snapped at a reporter. "I care about whether I can act." This attitude extended to his willingness to work with whatever tricks Warner Brothers cooked up to enhance his stature. Cinematographers invented the Kagny angle, a slightly low camera position that enhanced his stature without being obvious. Director Michael Curtis became a master at these subtle adjustments. Warner Brothers consistently padded Kagny's official biography, listing him at 5'9", a full 4 inches taller than reality. What made Kagny's height irrelevant was his incredible physical energy. His characteristic bouncing movements, rapid-fire delivery, and explosive emotional outbursts created such a commanding presence that audiences never noticed his stature. As film historian David Thompson observed, Kagny moved like a coiled spring. His energy made him seem larger than life regardless of his actual height. Edward G. Robinson. Edward G. Robinson created some of cinema's most terrifying characters, from the ruthless gangster Rico in Little Caesar to the relentless investigator in Double Indemnity. His dominating presence had audiences cowering in their seats, all while standing at a measly 5'5". Robinson's height deception wasn't just about camera tricks, it was psychological warfare. Directors like Mervyn LeRoy positioned Robinson in power spots, often seated behind desks, while others stood nervously before him. In confrontation scenes, Robinson would step uncomfortably close to taller actors, invading their personal space. This discomfort registered on camera as intimidation, not height disparity. His secret weapon? That voice. Clipped, precise, and forceful, Robinson spoke like each word was a command. Director John Huston said it perfectly. Eddie didn't need to be tall. He had a voice that made him 10 feet high. Warner Brothers worked overtime to hide his height, limiting journalists who could meet him in person and scheduling interviews at seated events. The studio's official biography listed him at 5'9", 4 inches taller than reality. Robinson's smaller stature actually made his gangster roles more terrifying. Here was a man who had to be twice as tough just to survive in a world of larger men. That chip on his shoulder translated into screen menace that towering actors could never achieve. Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart's tough, world-weary persona made him one of cinema's most iconic leading men. The star of Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon projected such commanding presence that fans were shocked to learn he stood barely 5'8", and some co-stars insisted he was closer to 5'6". Warner Brothers deployed the infamous Bogey Box, a portable platform Bogart would stand on when sharing scenes with taller co-stars. In Casablanca, Ingrid Bergman was actually slightly taller than Bogart, but you'd never know it thanks to director Michael Curtis's careful blocking. Bogart was frequently positioned on steps, or Bergman was seated when they appeared together. Cinematographer Arthur Edison developed specific lighting techniques that created the illusion of greater height, low camera angles, and strategic shadow placement that elongated Bogart's silhouette. Even Bogart's characteristic hunched posture and head tilt, often misinterpreted as part of his tough guy image, actually helped disguise height differences with taller actors. His minimalist approach to movement, remaining relatively still while letting his face and voice do the emotional work, wasn't just acting style, it was height preservation strategy. Moving too much risked revealing the careful staging that maintained his leading man stature. Director John Huston, who worked with Bogart on several classics, observed, "Bogey's physical stature was irrelevant to his screen presence. When he entered a room, you felt it before you saw him. That kind of presence can't be measured in inches." Mickey Rooney. At just 5'2", Mickey Rooney holds the distinction of being one of the shortest major male stars in Hollywood history. Yet this diminutive dynamo became MGM's biggest box office draw in the late 1930s, out-earning every other star on the lot while standing shorter than most teenage actresses. What makes Rooney's case unique is that MGM initially marketed him specifically as a youth star. His small stature was perfect for playing teenagers well into his 20s. The Andy Hardy films turned his height into an asset rather than a liability. The challenge came when Rooney matured and sought more adult roles. For these parts, MGM employed outrageous technical solutions, custom-made shoes with 3-inch lifts, specialized camera angles, and raised platforms. Cinematographer Harold Rawson developed specific lighting techniques to elongate Rooney's shadow on walls, creating a subliminal impression of greater height. When paired with Judy Garland, who was only 4'11", Rooney could appear relatively normal-sized without tricks, but when forced to act alongside taller stars, directors would position him on steps or have the other actors seated whenever possible. Throughout his remarkably long career spanning over 8 decades, Rooney maintained a philosophical attitude about his height. "I'm not a tall man," he once told an interviewer, "but I stand among giants in this business." Director Clarence Brown put it perfectly. Mickey had more talent in his 5'2" frame than most actors twice his size. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra didn't just walk into a room, he owned it. The voice, the swagger, the way people seemed to gravitate toward him. You'd swear the man was 6 feet tall, but the chairman of the board who made women swoon stood just 5'7", and some biographers claim he was even shorter. Sinatra got the standard Hollywood height boost. Custom elevator shoes adding 2 to 3 inches, low camera angles, and careful blocking during scenes with taller co-stars. During filming of From Here to Eternity, cinematographers used every trick in the book to make Sinatra appear taller than his actual height. What distinguished Sinatra was his absolute confidence that transcended physical dimensions. His alleged mob connections and powerful friends created an aura of danger and authority that made his actual height irrelevant. As director Gordon Douglas observed, "Frank carried himself like the most important man in any room. Because he believed it, everyone else did too." Unlike many shorter stars, Sinatra seemed comfortable with his height off-screen. He was famously photographed with women who were taller than him, including his wife Mia Farrow at 5'9", without flinching at the visual contrast. His legendary temperament and demands had nothing to do with insecurity about his height. Sinatra simply expected perfection in everything around him. The man who could silence a room with a glance didn't need physical stature. He had presence that made height irrelevant. As one director put it, Frank had something far more important than inches. When he walked onto a set, everyone felt it. Danny Kaye. Danny Kaye's extraordinary physical comedy, musical talents, and rapid-fire verbal delivery made him one of Hollywood's most beloved entertainers of the 1940s and 50s. Watching him dart across the screen in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty or The Court Jester, you'd never guess he stood just 5'7", shorter than many of his leading ladies. Kaye's greatest height-disguising weapon? He simply never stopped moving. His performances were so kinetic, constantly gesturing, dancing, contorting his face and body into impossible positions, that audiences never had time to register height comparisons with other actors. By the time you tried to size him up, he was already in the middle of another rapid-fire gag. Samuel Goldwyn Studios still employed traditional height-enhancing techniques, raised platforms for standing conversations with taller actresses, and specialized camera angles. But Kaye's physical proportions were actually perfect for his style. His compact frame and perfect coordination allowed him to execute complex physical comedy with a precision taller actors couldn't match. Costume designer Edith Head developed specific approaches to his wardrobe that enhanced his proportions, using vertical elements that created a lengthening effect. Unlike some shorter actors who were sensitive about their height, Kaye approached the issue with characteristic humor. During filming of White Christmas, alongside the 6'3" Bing Crosby, Kaye quipped, "Between the two of us, we average out to a perfect height. Bing's got the surplus and I've got the shortage." Director Norman Z. MacLeod observed, "Danny's energy makes you forget about physical dimensions. When he's performing, he expands beyond his actual size. He becomes as big as his talent, which is enormous." Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr. didn't just perform, he exploded onto the stage, singing, dancing, cracking jokes, switching instruments mid-song. His dynamic stage presence was so commanding that fans were stunned to learn he stood only 5'3", one of the shortest major male stars in Hollywood history. As a black performer, facing both racial discrimination and height challenges in mid-century America, Davis developed extraordinary versatility and technical perfection to overcome both barriers. "Being a short, one-eyed black man in show business meant I had to be 10 times better than everyone else just to get half the recognition," he once said. "So that's what I became, 10 times better." On stage with the Rat Pack, Davis was surrounded by much taller men like Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. Instead of looking small, he moved constantly, commanding attention with his rhythm, voice, and charisma. When not performing, he consistently wore specially designed elevator shoes, adding 2 to 3 inches both on and off screen. His trademark high pompadour hairstyle wasn't just fashion, it added valuable visual inches. Directors used traditional techniques like low camera angles and strategic blocking to minimize height differentials with taller co-stars, often positioning Davis on raised platforms. Unlike many stars who were sensitive about their stature, Davis incorporated self-deprecating humor about his height into performances. During one Rat Pack show, Dean Martin made a joke about his height, and Davis immediately fired back. "I may be looking up at you physically, but musically, you're looking up at me." As Frank Sinatra once remarked, "Sammy may be short in inches, but he's a giant in talent. When he performs, you forget about everything except the magic happening on stage." Burgess Meredith. Burgess Meredith created some of Hollywood's most unforgettable characters, from the gravel-voiced boxing trainer Mickey in Rocky to the cackling penguin in the 1960s Batman TV series. In both roles, he commanded every scene despite standing just 5'5". As a character actor rather than a leading man, Meredith had more flexibility with his height. For Mickey in Rocky, his small stature actually enhanced the character, making him look scrappy, wiry, and relentlessly tough. But when playing military officers or authority figures, the usual Hollywood height tricks came into play. Elevator shoes, raised platforms, and camera angles that put him on equal visual footing with taller co-stars. Meredith's secret weapon wasn't in props or camera tricks. It was his voice. Rich, resonant, and laser-precise, his delivery filled any room and demanded attention. Coupled with perfect posture and deliberately economical movements, he projected a presence far bigger than his actual frame. Director John Huston observed, "Burgess doesn't need height. He has a voice that fills any space." Unlike some actors who developed overcompensating performance styles, Meredith's work was characterized by remarkable subtlety and control. This restraint created a different kind of power that transcended physical dimensions. When occasionally asked about physical limitations, Meredith would typically respond, "An actor's job is to convince the audience of whatever the role requires. If I can make you believe I'm a military commander or a boxing champion, then my actual dimensions are irrelevant." This focus on craft over physical attributes helped him create one of Hollywood's most respected careers, spanning 7 decades. George Raft's cold, menacing presence made him Hollywood's definitive gangster in the 1930s and 40s. His sleek appearance and minimalist style in films like Scarface created such dangerous intensity that audiences never suspected he stood just 5'7". What made Raft's height deception unique was his background as a professional dancer. This training informed his characteristic stillness on screen, standing immobile with slight shifts in expression conveying emotion. This wasn't just an acting choice, but a practical technique that maintained carefully arranged height illusions without disrupting them through excessive movement. Warner Brothers employed all the standard tricks: low camera angles, vertical pinstripes, and custom shoes with 2-inch lifts. Raft was frequently paired with shorter actresses, and supporting actors were often selected partly based on their stature to avoid unflattering comparisons. His compact athletic build actually enhanced his gangster persona, conveying coiled energy and potential violence more effectively than a larger frame might have. As film historian Eddie Muller observed, "Raft didn't need to loom over you to be threatening. His stillness and those dead eyes made him scarier than bigger men who relied on their size for intimidation." The studio's publicity materials consistently inflated Raft's height, typically listing him at 5'10" or even 6 feet in some publications. Director Raoul Walsh later recalled, "George knew exactly what he was and wasn't. He didn't waste energy worrying about things he couldn't change. He focused on using what he had to maximum effect." Salmino's sensitive performances and youthful vulnerability made him one of the most compelling actors of the 1950s, particularly in his Oscar-nominated role opposite James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. Few fans realized the actor who created such memorable characterizations stood only 5'6". Interestingly, Mineo's height was initially an asset in his breakthrough roles playing troubled teenagers. His smaller stature effectively conveyed adolescent vulnerability and need for protection. Director Nicholas Ray specifically utilized Mineo's height differential with James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause to emphasize his character's youth and desire for guidance. As Mineo matured and sought more adult roles, his height became a significant challenge. Studios employed all the standard techniques: elevated shoes adding 2 to 3 inches, low camera angles, and strategic blocking to minimize direct comparisons with taller actors. His distinctive pompadour hairstyle, which became part of his signature look, added several visual inches to his height. Unlike some stars who fought desperately to appear taller at all times, Mineo occasionally allowed his smaller stature to serve character purposes, particularly in roles where vulnerability remained important. What's particularly notable about Mineo's case is how height limitations contributed to his typecasting challenges. As he aged out of teenage roles, his smaller stature made the transition to conventional leading man parts difficult, potentially contributing to career struggles in his later years. Director Don Siegel observed, Sal had more talent in his small frame than most actors twice his size. It's unfortunate that Hollywood sometimes couldn't see past physical attributes to the extraordinary gifts he possessed. Claude Reigns. Claude Reigns' commanding voice and extraordinary screen presence made him one of cinema's most versatile character actors. From the sinister Captain Renault in Casablanca to the tragic Phantom in Phantom of the Opera, Reigns dominated every scene, all while standing just 5'6". Reigns's greatest asset was undoubtedly his voice, rich, resonant, and capable of conveying more emotion in a whisper than most actors could with a shout. This vocal power made his physical stature irrelevant. Audiences were so captivated by his delivery that they never noticed his height. Warner Brothers still employed the standard techniques when Reigns appeared alongside taller stars like Humphrey Bogart or Paul Henreid. He would stand on raised platforms, wear custom shoes with internal lifts, and benefit from strategic camera angles that minimized height differentials. His first major Hollywood role was ironically perfect for a shorter actor, the title character in The Invisible Man, where his physical presence was concealed for most of the film, allowing his magnificent voice to carry the performance. This established Reigns as a major talent without audiences ever seeing his full physical appearance. What made Reigns exceptional was his extraordinary range. He could play villains, sympathetic characters, aristocrats, or working-class men with equal conviction. This versatility meant directors focused on his performance abilities rather than physical limitations. Director Michael Curtis, who worked with Reigns on several films including Casablanca, remarked, "Claude doesn't need height to command attention. When he speaks, the audience leans forward to catch every syllable. That's power no physical dimension can match." Charles Boyer. Charles Boyer's smoldering intensity and sophisticated European charm made him Hollywood's quintessential romantic leading man in the 1930s and 40s. Women worldwide swooned over his performances in films like Gaslight and Love Affair, never realizing their dream lover stood just 5'7". Boyer's French accent and continental sophistication created such a powerful romantic persona that his height became completely irrelevant. Studio publicity materials consistently exaggerated his stature, listing him at 5'11", a full 4 inches taller than reality. When paired with taller actresses like Ingrid Bergman, 5'9", directors used every trick in the Hollywood playbook. Boyer would stand on hidden platforms, actresses would be positioned in lower seats, and camera angles would carefully maintain the romantic illusion. Boyer's immaculate tailoring helped create a lengthening effect. His suits were custom designed with vertical elements and perfect proportions that visually extended his frame. Unlike some shorter actors who became known for high-energy performances, Boyer developed a deliberately controlled, almost hypnotic performance style that minimized the need for physical comparisons. His most famous line, "Come with me to the Casbah," became such a cultural touchstone that Boyer's romantic reputation transcended any physical considerations. As one female fan reportedly told a movie magazine, "When Charles Boyer looks into a woman's eyes, no one is measuring his height." Director Ernst Lubitsch observed, "Boyer has something much more important than physical stature. He has presence, sophistication, and the ability to make every woman in the audience believe he is speaking only to her. Next to that power, inches are meaningless." Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney was Hollywood's most respected character actor of the 1930s, completely transforming himself for roles like Scarface and Louis Pasteur. Critics called him the man of 1,000 faces, but none of those faces stood taller than 5'7". Mooney's extraordinary ability to physically transform himself for each role made his actual height largely irrelevant. Audiences were so captivated by his metamorphosis into historical figures and fictional characters that physical dimensions became secondary to his performance. For his 7-year contract with Warner Brothers, the studio still employed standard height enhancement techniques when necessary. Mooney would wear built-up shoes for roles requiring greater stature, benefit from strategic camera angles and be positioned on slightly raised platforms when sharing scenes with taller actors. What distinguished Mooney was his complete disappearance into characters. He spent months researching historical figures, mastering accents, and working with makeup artists to create physical transformations so complete that his own mother reportedly failed to recognize him on set for The Story of Louis Pasteur. This chameleon-like quality extended to how his height was perceived. Mooney could seem imposing as gangster Tony Camonte in Scarface through sheer intensity, then appear physically diminished as the hunted fugitive in I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang when the role required vulnerability. Film critic Richard Griffith wrote, "Mooney doesn't have a physical type. He becomes whatever the role demands. When playing powerful men, he seems to physically grow on screen through sheer force of characterization. When the part calls for weakness, he can appear to shrink before your eyes." Peter Lorre. Peter Lorre's bulging eyes and soft, sinister voice created some of cinema's most unforgettable villains. From the child murderer in M to the mysterious Joel Cairo in The Maltese Falcon, Lorre chilled audiences to the bone, all while standing just 5'5". What made Lorre's short stature work for him was how he incorporated it into his screen persona. Rather than fighting his physical limitations, he embraced them, creating characters whose psychological intensity made physical dimensions irrelevant. His characters didn't intimidate through size. They disturbed through unpredictability and hidden menace. Warner Brothers still employed standard height-enhancing techniques when Lorre appeared alongside taller stars. In The Maltese Falcon, director John Huston carefully blocked scenes to minimize the height difference between Lorre and Humphrey Bogart. Custom shoes with lifts added about 2 inches to Lorre's height in most films. His distinctive, high-pitched voice became his trademark, soft, precise, and capable of switching from childlike innocence to chilling threat in mid-sentence. This vocal control created such a powerful impression that audiences forgot physical considerations entirely. Lorre's career took a fascinating turn when he was paired with another shorter actor, Sidney Greenstreet, 5'9", but weighing nearly 300 pounds, in films like The Maltese Falcon and Casablanca. Their physical contrast created such a visually striking pair that both actors' heights became irrelevant next to their combined screen chemistry. Director John Huston observed, "Peter understood something most actors never grasp, that physical intimidation is the least interesting form of menace. His characters disturbed audiences because you could never predict what they might do next. Next to that kind of psychological threat, being tall means nothing." Which of these stars surprised you the most? Had you ever spotted the hidden platforms or camera tricks in your favorite classic films? Let us know in the comments below. And consider this: in today's Hollywood, would any of these legendary performers even get cast as leading men? Or have we lost something valuable by becoming obsessed with physical dimensions over actual talent? The answer might reveal more about us than about these giants of the silver screen.